Alright guys, today we're going to talk about the rise of absolutism. So, what absolutism means is a political system in which one single ruler has unrestricted power. And when we're looking at it today, we're going to be looking at the monarchs in Europe. And what this means is these monarchs, they can do whatever they want, and there's no one to sit there and tell them they cannot do that or they shouldn't do that. Now, some of these monarchs are going to be considered enlightened despots, which this means that they are absolute monarchs. They're doing whatever they want, but what they're doing is actually trying to benefit society, and they're actually trying to improve the lives of their citizens. So, the first country we're going to look at today is Spain. So, King Charles V, he's staunchly Catholic. He was Holy Roman Emperor. He tries to suppress Martin Luther. We talked about this with the Edict of Worms. He declares himself a heretic. He tries to have Martin Luther killed. Later on in his life, he gets tired of being a king and he retires and becomes a monk. He splits up his territory. He had one of the biggest territories in Europe, had the most power, because remember Spain started colonizing the New World, so they're bringing in all this extra money. So when he retires, he gives up control of the Holy Roman Empire to his brother, and he gives Spain and his colonies in the Netherlands to his son, Philip II. So, Philip II, remember we talked about Mary I of England during the Protestant Reformation. He married her. He ends up divorcing her because she can't give him kids, but he really believed in absolute monarchy. He believed that he ruled by divine right or through God's authority. He wants to protect the Catholic Church. He starts the Spanish Inquisition, hunting down anybody that went against the Catholic Church, Protestants, Jews, and killing them or forcing them to reconvert back to Catholicism. Now, when Mary dies and everything in England, and her sister takes over and restores Protestantism to England, he tries to do the right thing by the church, and he tries to invade England. He sends the Spanish Armada. Spain had the biggest navy during this time. So, the problem is that England is an island, and we've talked about this before, so England's main job is to protect themselves via the water before you get a landing force. Now, Spain had two things that hurt itself during this time. The bad weather and the English smaller, faster ships led to destruction of the whole entire Spanish Armada. This destruction caused Spain to ruin its economy and decrease as the world power. This leaves a power vacuum for England and France to take over and become the world's powers, and Spain is left on the back burner from now on. So, that was Spain. Now we're going to look at France. France, they had one big king that was considered an absolute monarch. This guy, King Louis XIV, he becomes king at the age of 5. He rules for 72 years. He refers to himself as the Sun King. He believed everything revolved around him. He builds this magnificent palace in the middle of the woods. It was the family's hunting lodge. He makes it into a huge palace that houses over 10,000 people. And he forces the whole entire French government to move out there and live over there so he can always have a constant watchful eye. He would note who was there, who wasn't there. If you tried to attend meetings with him but you weren't showing up to the other meetings, he would act like he didn't know you. He was very self-conscious about what was going on at the Palace of Versailles. So he was an absolute monarch, so he gets rid of the Estate General. He rules by himself. He has a standing army of 300,000 men. He revoked the Edict of Nantes. He gets rid of the Edict of Nantes, which, remember, we talked about this with Protestant Reformation, gave freedom of religion to Protestants and forces all these Protestants and Jews to flee France. His personal motto, he always believed, was, "I am the state." He was the state. He was the law. He decided everything. So, going from France, we're going to go to the Holy Roman Empire to what's going to become the future Germany. Austria and Prussia are going to start growing during this time. This area right here is housed to Catholics and Protestants. This is just a fight waiting to happen. These two groups don't get along with each other, and so violence is just waiting to erupt between these two groups. And it eventually does, in what is known as the 30-Year War. You have a rebellion that breaks out in the Bohemian city of Prague when the king tries to suppress Protestantism. You have violence going on both sides, people being killed. A third of Central Europe's population may have died during this time. It gets almost all of Europe involved, even though it was a small-scale thing. It was only happening in a small section of Europe. Everybody gets involved, taking up sides for the Protestants or the Catholics. So, it only ends when you have the Peace of Westphalia, which ends this war. It breaks up all this territory, the Holy Roman Empire. It breaks all this up. France gets more territory. All this area is broken up into 360 separate states, each one being able to govern themselves. Switzerland, right here, and Netherlands up here, they become independent states. They're allowed to have their own governments and everything. And this leads to the rise of Austria down here and Prussia up here. Now, the big thing to remember is Austria is going to be Catholic down here, while Prussia is going to be Protestant up here. So, Austria, Marie Theresa, she, again, another absolutist. She dictated reform and everything from education and agriculture to military. She was Catholic, so she only allowed people to be Catholic in Austria. She had these moral decency police. You couldn't gamble, couldn't have prostitutes, nothing undesirable was allowed in Austria. Now, she does try to do stuff that is good and helpful for her citizens. She forces smallpox inoculations, which inoculation is like a vaccine, but it runs the risk of death. And she forced these on her citizens, so all the citizens have to take it. Doesn't matter. There are people going to die from this, but she had good intentions when she did this. Now, she is the mother of 16 children. One of them, Maria Antoinette, we'll talk about with the French Revolution in the next unit, and she's going to become the future queen of France. Her son, he is a enlightened despot. He ruled, absolutely, but the people loved him. He did stuff that kept the people happy. He abolished death penalty, built public schools. He felt like he never did enough, though. He felt like he could have done so much more, so his grave reads, "Here lies Joseph II, who failed in all he undertook." He never believed he did enough for the people of Austria. Now, Prussia, on the other hand, Prussia's Frederick William I, he makes education mandatory. He forces the nobility to serve in the army. He even had his own son, court-martial, which essentially he has to go to court and the army and everything because he wasn't doing what he was supposed to do. He didn't hold anybody above the law except for himself. His son, the one that he had court-martialed, he is an enlightened despot. He forces Prussian government to modernize the agriculture industry. He wants Prussia to keep up with everything that's going on in Western Europe. He practices religious tolerance. He allowed Jews to live in Prussia. He even advocated peace with the Muslims. Let's put our past behind us and let's move forward. Now, he also knew 9 languages. He was a musician, artist, and a Freemason. So, that's Prussia, Austria. We're going to keep moving east. We're going to talk about Russia now. Peter the Great, he travels all over Western Europe. He's loving what he sees. And this, if you recall, I told a story about like people in Western Europe getting iPhone 7, people in Eastern Europe and Russia getting iPhone 6. This is what happens. When Western Europe's getting rid of feudalism, Russia starts introducing them. So, he saw how the people in Western Europe dressed, how they acted, and everything, and he forces the people in Russia to do it. If they wanted to enter the city of Petersburg, They had to cut their beards, they had to cut their coats, they had to dress like the people in the West. He brings the serfdom idea, the feudalism system, into Russia. He starts having serfs and all this stuff, but that's getting rid of in Western Europe, but he just starts introducing it into Russia. So, Russia is very cold. The Arctic Ocean freezes over during the winter, so Peter wants to get a warm water port. So he looks at trying to seize the Black Sea ports from the Ottomans. He fails. He fights a war with Sweden, and he does get access to the Baltic Sea. So now they have a warm water port so they can trade and everything during their cold winter months. He goes and he visits Versailles in France. He sees how magnificent the palace is, so he starts building Petersburg, and he wants it to be a Russian Versailles. Now, he does push Russia's border as far east as he wanted. He takes over Alaska and North America. This is a big thing, because when you go in American history and you learn about this, the idea of Russia being in North America, that's the whole entire reason why we buy Alaska from Russia, because we don't want them in our territory. We don't want them spying on us. But Russia had Alaska during this time, so they did technically colonize part of North America also. So, Catherine the Great, she's going to be the last one we talk about today. Another enlightened despot. She expands the Russian Empire. She is brutal. She suppressed rebellions. She does promote education, even for women. She said women deserve to be educated just like men. And this, she's a woman leader. She's in control of Russia when her husband, Tsar Peter III, dies. She modernizes the government. She keeps on doing what her husband did, trying to better the lives of the Russians and make them more like Western Europe. Now, she does censor the press. If the press is talking crap about her or anything she's doing, they're not allowed to. She makes sure that the press is only showing good things that the government's doing. She promotes Orthodox Christianity, but she does allow Muslims and Jews to live in Russia and to be able to practice their religions. So, that's it for the Absolute Monarchs. This listed the big ones we talked about. The other ones we talked about, more enlightened despots. They were doing stuff that was good. People really loved them. But remember this quote: power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. This idea that if there's no one to keep you in check, who makes sure what you're doing is more helpful than hurtful to your citizens.